cannot do without light. So important. Harder to find your way around. How many have ever stubbed their toe in the middle of the night? We know what that's like. Without light. When in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus used two powerful metaphors to describe his people. He calls us his light and salt. Salt and light. And so both of them are very useful. They're valuable to us. But they have different approaches in the way that they function. For instance, salt is hidden, whereas light is obvious. Salt works secretly, light works openly. Salt works from within, light from without. And so you might say that salt speaks of the indirect influence of the gospel, and light the direct influence of our communication. Now, salt is largely negative. It can prohibit corruption, hinder corruption, but it cannot turn corruption into incorruption. Once it's corrupt, salt can't do anything about it. Light is more positive. Not only does it reveal what's wrong and false, but helps produce what is right and true. So when Jesus calls us salt and light, I believe he's telling us how he wanted us to respond to this world that he left us in. To be an influence. We're to be salt to help hinder the corruption of this world, but we're also to be light to dispel the darkness that is in this world that we find all around us. And with darkness comes confusion. You know anybody spiritually confused today? They're all over the place. And so we are called to help them. Now, you chemists out there, realize that salt is composed of chloride and sodium. They are two highly explosive materials, are they not? And so God combined them and stabilized them. And now salt is edible, right? And it's valuable to us. Light is a downright miracle. Have you ever read a definition of light? Well, you're about to hear one. Here's what Mr. Webster says about light. It is something that makes vision possible. Light is something that makes vision possible. The sensation aroused by stimulation of the visual receptors and electromagnetic radiation in the wavelength range, including infrared, visible, ultraviolet, and X-rays, and traveling in a vacuum with a speed of about 186,281 miles per second. And so he says specifically at the part of this range that is visible to the human eye. Thank you very much, Mr. Webster. So both salt and light have the ability to change their world. And so does the Christian, by the way. And maybe that's why Jesus used these common elements to the people he's speaking to realize that they can influence the world they live in. And so both these images tell the influence we can have. But today I just want to focus on Jesus' command to shine. We are to shine. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, he talks about the power of light. You are the light of the world. Now notice it seems like in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is ushering in the new kingdom. He's laying down the law of the new kingdom. The old kingdom, the old covenant, had the law of Moses. And so Jesus, that's why he says to you that you have heard that it was said, but I tell you. And he steps up the law a little bit. And so he says that you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Now the light does amazing things. It doesn't have any physical property, but it has a dramatic impact, profound effects on the physical objects around. Light is basically a wave of energy that can be seen by the naked eye. Okay? That's, of course. But let's look at some ways that it affects our world. Light conquers darkness. Wherever there's a little bit of light, darkness is forced to flee. I mean, you can have the deepest, darkest situation and simply light a match. darkness flees. I saw a skit one time of and the actor was a scientist who discovered that what we call as the flashlight is not really a flashlight, it's a dark sucker. You turn the switch and all the darkness comes in there and it's held in the battery. So very powerful, this light. And so the same is true in the spiritual realm when we talk about our light. The Bible says in Psalm 119, the longest chapter of the Bible, verse 130, the unfolding of your word, talking to God, the unfolding of your word, the ancient words, gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. And then a very familiar verse in verse 105 of chapter 119, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And so when light walks in, darkness exits. It's out of here. And I think the Lord, by using that metaphor, is encouraging us the same way. When a Christian walks in, darkness gets uncomfortable. We just had a question in our Sunday school hour, why do people try to discourage you when you're going to church and trying to live the spiritual life? Because that's what darkness does. It hates light, it tries to overcome light, and Satan is darkness, and he will try to snuff you out. And he will if you let him. So don't let him. We ought to thank God for light, because a Christian who is shining the light of Christ can bring light to the darkest of situations in life. Now, it also keeps us from making all kinds of mistakes that we make in the dark. Back in the days before electricity, a tight-fisted old farmer was taking his hired farmhand to task for carrying a lighted lantern to go meet his best girl. And the farmer said, why, when I went a-courting, I never carried one of them things. I always went in the dark. Yes, the hired man said, and look what you got. Light also colors drabness. Now they say that color is just a trick of the eye. It's usually perceived as being white. Light is white, but apparently it's made up of varying energy wavelength. And so the wavelengths are comprised of all the colors of the spectrum. And when the light hits an object, the light will either absorb it or reflect it. Reflect the whatever it is, the color of the spectrum. Now, there are things, some objects that scatter light or bend light beyond my intelligence, but that's what they tell me. But for our purpose of our study, let's talk about how light is either absorbed or reflected. And so if an object absorbs all the light that hits it, the object will appear black. Okay? And if an object reflects all the light that hits it, it will appear white. So, for instance, if an object absorbs every wavelength except blue, it will appear blue. If it absorbs every wavelength but red, it'll be red, and so on and so on. You get that picture? So without light, the world would be drab. There would be no color if it were not for light. And Jesus said to his people, you are the light of the world. And so not only should your presence cause darkness to dispel and leave, you should make the world a better place. You should make it enjoyable and colorful in this world we live in. Light also changes deadness. Now the ancient Greeks, when they looked at the passing of winter and started seeing the new growth of spring, praised their gods. Thought their gods did that. The god of the valley, the god of the river, the god of the trees. They've come back. But we know that spring comes because God designed it. Yahweh designed it that way. Not the God, not these small g gods, but the major almighty creator God is who designed spring to come after the passing of winter. You see, the Earth moves closer in its orbit to the sun, and light reaches our planet and brings, you see those dead old trees in your yard, and all of a sudden you start seeing buds come out, and leaves, and fruit, and all that sort of thing. And so light has a tremendous impact on our world. And you might say the light of the gospel does the same thing. As you shine your light, the light of Christ who is in you, it can warm the heart of a lost sinner who is dead in their sin. That's what the Bible describes those that are outside of Christ. They are dead in the mind of God. If you do not have the blood of Christ on you, if you do not obey the gospel in the mind of God, isn't that really where you're saved? You're not saved in your own heart. Your heart is deceptive. It will tell you you're saved and you're not. You are saved in the mind of God. God knows your heart. And He knows if you have obeyed the gospel. But outside of Christ, you're dead. And so, if you let the light of Christ shine through you, you can warm that dead heart and start to bring life back into it. And Jesus will work through you and bring life out of death. Light conditions dreariness as well. How many times have you seen a dark, dreary day? I thought we were going to have one today, but it's not. And all of a sudden, a little beam of sun comes through. Makes you feel better, doesn't it? Get rid of that dreariness. And so the day is immediately transformed. Why? Because of the appearance of light. Light is great. And this world can be a dreary place. I'm talking about the weather, but the spiritual climate. But however dark, dreary my day may be, if I run across one of you, shining the light of Christ, my day is immediately improved. I hope it's the same for you. A chill in your soul, but a few minutes around a brother or sister shining the light of the Lord, hopefully it warms you, warms your spirit. Now Jesus tells us there's a twofold purpose of this light that He's placed within us. First of all, the light becomes a witness to the lost. You see, when lost people see the light of Christ in you, they'll take notice. And notice that it produces works, not just works, but good works. What's the difference between works and good works? Well, good works are produced in us because of our relationship with Jesus Christ. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live. I don't live any longer, but Christ lives in me. So the life I have once lived, I now live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. So it's no longer Phil Strunk. Phil Strunk should no longer promote himself. He should promote Christ. Crucified with Christ. And so as the lost world sees the difference that Jesus makes in a life, God is honored and glorified, not us. And so that second thing is we become a witness to the Lord. Not only witness to the lost, but witness to the Lord. Now, he goes on to talk about some of these good things that come into our life because of a relationship with Jesus. And when we come into a relationship with Jesus, He brings in the third person of the Godhead, the Holy Spirit, to dwell in us. And He did a whole study on the influence that He has on us, right? The fruit of the Spirit. And so when the Spirit is in us, we will have love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. And so, remember we said that wasn't a pick and choose. Okay, I'll take the love, but I don't think I want the joy. No. If the Spirit is in you, you'll have all these things. Take a little inventory of your life. Do you have them? So, as we get ready to close, I want you to realize that light does not exist to call attention to itself. We don't think about light as we're sitting here and we see all the color that's around here. It draws attention to the thing that it illuminates. loved us and saved us, even though we deserve eternal damnation. He saved us. And so, when people look at us, they shouldn't say, man, you're a great Christian. That's not the purpose. We want them to say, wow, you must serve a great God. Not like the middle. And so if you're a Christ follower, I know we got technical this morning, but the simple message is you are commanded to shine. So what are you doing with your light? What's Jesus say? We don't light a lamp and put it under a basket. We put it on a lampstand. So everybody sees. Your light should honor God. And if you are not living your life to honor God, you're out of order. So shine. Illuminate Christ. Let people see Christ in you. Reproduce Christ in you and someone else. That's what discipleship is all about. Making disciples is reproducing Christ who is in me and someone else. You can do that. So use your light well.